Right, we're recording. Hello, welcome everyone. This is a webinar about the 3 steps to becoming more resilient, cultivating your innate capacity to deal with anything. I'm Lawrence Knott. I'm a coach, hypnotherapist, a trainer, and the theme of this really came up because there's so much going on in the world right now where we are having to be resilient. We've got a lot of challenges going on outside of us, and I know very much in my life it's been challenging. I've had to tap into my own resilience. So, what we're going to explore tonight, as I mentioned, I'm going to make it interactive, I'm going to do some pauses, but basically I'm going to talk about resilience in a different kind of way. But we're going to look at those different definitions of resilience, look at the characteristics of resilient people, and what I'm really going to focus on tonight and share, the 3 hidden variables that determine how resilient you are, or that can help you be more resilient in a different kind of way. Because what I'll be sharing is the value of understanding how your mind works in becoming more resilient to the ups and downs of life. And actually, when you see it for yourself, it's a lot easier to bring it out in others, to help other people. And that's what we are really doing at the moment in life. So think about resilience. Now, a lot of the images I use, the original word resilience comes from metallurgy. So you can bend something back into a shape. But the common definitions around the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity, the capacity we all have, just letting someone in, the capacity we all have to adapt and cope with unfavorable situations. Think of what's going on in the world right now. The ability to withstand, adapt, and recover from adversity and stress. All kind of along the same lines, yeah? The ability to cope with whatever life throws at you. And some people are knocked down by challenges, but they return as a stronger person, more steadfast than before. That's really interesting, isn't it? About we can be resilient, but we grow from it. And a different kind of one that comes from my world about how the mind works, and when we see how it works, this is an implication. We are not bound by circumstances or the past. We're not controlled by what's going on outside of us. So I'm going to come back round to that. So here's the rhetorical questions for us to consider. Do you consider yourself to be resilient? To what extent do you think you possess this capacity or ability, on a kind of scale of 1 to 10, this capacity to recover? What about those around you? Family, friends, colleagues? What do you see and how resilient they are? And why is it that some people seem better able to bounce back from difficulties than others? What do they know that we don't? And actually, what binds ourselves to the past or our circumstances that, if you like, creates a straitjacket that prevents us from being resilient? And is it a skill? Can we learn this? Or is it innate within us all? Is it fixed? Or is it variable? Does it go up and down the extent to which we are resilient? And if it is variable, what's the determining factor of how resilient you are in any moment? Well, let's explore, yeah? Now, in my world, there's lots of ways you can measure resilience, and I did some research around this. There's loads of different metrics, personality tests that capture resilient thinking styles and behaviors. And some that I just drew out because that capacity to bounce back and deal with adversity, to adapt to situations. Well, here were some sort of things I drew out. I'm able to detect the cause of my problems. I know how to handle my emotions. I keep calm in stressful situations. I'm realistic. I trust myself. I'm empathetic. I'm able to motivate myself. And I don't ask why, I ask how. I'm solution focused. And something I added in there that I drew from positive psychology, I learn from adverse experience and grow back stronger. That goes back to that point before. So we're going to come back, circle back round. They're just the indicators. If someone says to me, how can I behave more like this? Or how can I have more thinking that enables me? I say, take a step back. Because the key for me to cultivating and growing and tapping into our innate resilience is understanding how our mind works. So how can we unlock the key? Well, This has been around forever. Now, those old enough will recognize this picture. What have the Romans ever done for us? That's from the Life of Brian. That's John Cleese in the middle there. Now, I'm just going to share a few quotes here, but just to reflect, when we talk about resilience, we're talking about mental health. We're talking about well-being. We're talking about our capacity to tap into something that's inside of us so we can deal with what's outside of us. Resilience as a word has become fashionable to talk about, but really, we've been talking about this for thousands of years. So for me, an entry point to give people a feel for it is that resilience is knowing where the power lies within your own psychology. So Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. And some quotes I drew from him. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Then he said, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. So what he's pointing to there is resilience comes from within. Now there's a phrase in psychology called internal locus of control, compared to external locus of control. Who's got the power? What we're pointing to here is the extent to which we believe we have this power over our mind, over our, basically, how we see the world. Now, before the Romans, the Greeks had this. Epictetus was one of the original Stoic philosophers. It's a bit of a dense kind of quote, but this everyday wisdom has been around forever. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. And when then do I look for good and evil, not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. Now that's powerful. That's all about what is under my control. It's all about controlling the controllables, if you like, in very simple terms. And the serenity prayer. Now this is used in the recovery from addiction. And it's really powerful. I like this quote. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can, things under my control, and wisdom to know the difference. That's really interesting, isn't it? Because we're maybe playing around, but what can I control? And when we get overwhelmed, when we feel that the world is coming at us, it maybe can be really difficult to work out the difference. And that's the thing. When we get overwhelmed, what do? We panic. We go into fight or flight. So this, you see, from Dad's Army, Corporal Jones, don't panic, running around panicking. Well, the epitome of Victorian Stoicism is from this poem. This is an extract of the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. It's all about taking that step back. And what I'm going to be talking about tonight is how we take a step back psychologically. So the final quote here that's really powerful, it is attributed to Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, who basically survived the Nazi concentration camps. It's attributed to him, but maybe the exact words aren't in his text, but Stephen Covey and Rollo May very much talk about what he pointed to. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Now that is like, you can learn a whole life's worth from that quote, but you just need to take a step back from it. Because what we're going to explore tonight is, in that space lies wisdom and understanding. In that space lies our well-being and mental health. In that space lies our resilience. So I hope you're still with me. So this is an image we're going to come, a graphic we're going to come back to. That stimulus, that could be COVID-19. That could be, a significant life event. But what do? Do we panic? Do we go running for the hills, or do we get overwhelmed, or we turn to coping strategies that aren't necessarily healthy? Do we basically disappear and hide under the bed? That response can be the big action and response, but it can be in the moment. Like seeing a spider, and then because we've got a phobic response, we then respond with screaming. What is this space? I'm not talking about the milliseconds. It's the bigger space. That's how I interpret this. So we're going to come back to this, because what I see this space as is the power of our mind, but the power to understand how our mind is working. So the 3 steps I'm going to introduce you to tonight is how you can become more resilient. See how your mind works from the inside out. See resilience as part of the elegant design of your mind. And begin to get a feel for the role of understanding and self-awareness. So let's look at resilience as something slightly differently, as something impersonal, universal, and innate, and a natural consequence of understanding how you operate psychologically. How does this relate to the quotes I've been sharing? Well, it's that capacity to separate ourselves from our experience and see what's going on. So who here has ever felt completely overwhelmed and taken a step back later and go, wow, what was I thinking? That's the kind of territory we're going to be exploring tonight. But looking at it as more, this is how it works, versus what do I do with this now, Lawrence? Tell me how to do this. So bear with me. I'm going to run through some ideas. So that first idea, how the mind works from the inside out. Well, what you experience is not reality. I'm going to try and let you sort of see this for yourself. There's lots of devices we use in teaching this. Been used in psychology for years, You can see a white triangle there, can't you? No, there's no triangle. There's no white triangle. Your brain has to hallucinate that into being. It's inferred. Your brain is a pattern matching machine. It takes in a huge amount of information and then projects out what it expects to see and tries to make sense of reality. Well, that can get compromised. And what do you see here? Do you see an old woman, or do you see a young woman? It all depends on your perspective, really, doesn't it? So you can see an old woman if I point her nose out here with her chin, but then blink and you can see a woman with her black hair and a feather pointing to the left there. You can probably switch between them, but reality isn't fixed. There's always a different way of seeing things. And another one I use in my workshops all the time. Do you see that arrow? Now I'm primed. I see this everywhere. I think London is just overrun with FedEx vans now. Because my brain has, if you like, been primed to look out for them. But there's a hidden white arrow here. Now I use this in different ways in my workshops, but for a lot of people, they're like, I've never seen this before. Well, it was there, hidden in plain sight. So just think about all those things that maybe are hidden in plain sight that are not so obvious to you. So this is the first idea I share as part of my workshops and my resilience trainings. So I know I'm just going through it very lightly right now, but it's how life's always coming through you 100% of the time. It's the fact that your mind is more like a projector than a camera. You're always living in the creative incubator of your own mind, your brain basically processing all this information. So what you see, hear, and feel is just your version of reality. It is a projection out from within your own mind. But it looks like, we can know this intellectually, of course, theoretically, but it looks like life's coming at us. It looks like there's an objective reality out there. But that's not how it works. Now we're going to basically, as part of this conversation tonight, just help you find some evidence. Because when we feel like the world is coming at us, we're at the mercy of the world. Go back to those Stoic quotes. Who's got control over your experience? Well, because it's happening so quickly, yeah? Because what you see, hear, and feel is basically happening at unconscious level, we forget we are doing it. So, going into this, it's the nature of the human experience that what you see, hear, and feel, the totality of your experience, it looks like it's an accurate representation of what's happening out there. It's just what's going on in your mind right there and then. So, but we experience what we experience as true and real. Yeah. Whoever's been in an argument with someone and you have completely opposing views, what's going on there? A version of an event that is so polarized. It's just our version. Now, neuroscience backs this up now. You know, all of our moment-to-moment experience is coming from within the creative incubator of your own mind. But it's not obvious to us. That's the most important point. We forget. I think we're designed to forget this. But if your experience is more like a projector and a camera, how can this be empowering for you? Knowing this and seeing this, how can that knowledge help you be more resilient to what life throws at you? Because if life isn't really coming at you, it's coming through you, that probably is going to help you be more resilient. I dropped this one in last minute. It's like we're living in a world of thought. You know, you go to Mr. Fish and say, "How's the water, Mr. Fish?" And he's going to say, "What water?" It's just the world he lives in. You live in and swim in a world of your own thinking, your own creativity from your mind. David Bohm, the quantum physicist who turned to philosophy, said, you know, thought creates the world, and then says, "I didn't do it." Well, that's the creative power of thought that's coming from within you. But the thing is, right, from the day we're born, we're conditioned not to know this or to forget this. So if you think of a little child, so this is just a little example, a little illustration, yeah? It so looks like out there causes our experience, causes our feelings. But think of, you know, little Johnny, let's call him Johnny. That basically, you know, if he's uncomfortable and he's okay, he's just crying a little bit, what would we do? I know there's parents here tonight. What would you do? You'd give them their favourite teddy bear. And generally, what would happen? Well, then he settles down again and he has that nice peaceful and he goes back to sleep and you look at him and you dote over him. But the curious question here is, where do those feelings of comfort and peace that the baby experiences, that Johnny experiences, where are they actually coming from? What is the causal factor? Are they coming from the teddy bear or are they arising from within? Well, we know, yeah, we're the grown-ups. We're like, well, he's falling for the trick, but you know. And I'm not talking about the soft kind of cuddly teddy bear makes him feel warm. I had a rag about, you know, a few centimeters size long. By the end, I'd kind of destroyed it. Some people have imaginary friends. It's all coming from within, but it looks like it comes from objects outside of us, whether they're physical objects or objects of the mind. We are conditioned into this from a very young age. So no wonder, as we get older, when we look for basically things to make us feel a certain way, you can ask yourself, where do the feelings of comfort and peace come from within you? Come from as an adult? Is it winning at life, the big house, being lucky in love, from knowledge, through beautiful objects, through creating a beautiful life? Or the things you kind of rely on to make you feel good, whether it's drugs or prescription or recreational or drinking, partying, beautiful clothes from your family, or your metaphorical teddy bears. But if we go back to the original one, well, we're in on the joke as an adult with the baby. When I say a joke, you know, we know it doesn't really, but it's the association that creates the feeling. And then as an adult, we start tying our feelings of being comfortable, okay, to outside things. That includes our narrative of our life. And on the flip side then, because it only has to, you know, can only work one way, when you feel worried, anxious, overwhelmed, where do those feelings come from? What causes them? Well, it's the same stuff, isn't it? I'm running out of money, going out of business because of COVID, can't pay my mortgage, all these extra costs I've got. I'm being, I have a relationship that's really struggling now. And actually, well, I'm just drinking too much. And all that thinking, yeah, creates a lot up here. And that's what happens. Things are happening on the outside of us, but really we're only ever experiencing our thinking about them. Even here, I could draw it's your experience within your mind of these objects that are creating your feeling. You're always feeling you're thinking about the world, but it doesn't look like that. Just letting a few people back in. And this is the thing, yeah? What's on in our mind will basically be our world. So when we're feeling worried, anxious, and overwhelmed, basically relevant to tonight, where we're feeling unresourceful, when we feel like we haven't got access to our resilience, we've got a lot going on up here. Well, what I do, I go into a lot more depth in my workshops and my work with people. It's like, I ask them, where do any of your feelings come from? Good, bad, and ugly. Well, it looks like the outside is causing our experience, but we're only ever living in the felt experience of our own mind. It only works this way, but I'll keep coming back to it. It looks like it works the other way around. So the first point there is resilience. When you see how the mind works, how it works the other way around than it seems, it's an inside job. Got to look within your own mind. And the quote that really resonates and encapsulates this for me: there's nothing outside that can help you. There's nothing outside that can hurt you, because there is no outside. Now, that's by Sydney Banks, the Scottish welder turned philosopher who articulated this particular understanding of the mind. All he's saying is that there's no outside of your own psychology. You cannot directly experience reality. It might sound a bit full on and heavy, that. Some people see it as very spiritual. I see it as like, well, go back to that Stoic philosophy about what can I control, or what is within well, it's kind of everything. In any moment, your experience of life is only ever coming from within. So I'm going to move forward, because then we can have a broader conversation. So the second point, yeah. So you see how the mind works from the inside out, and you begin to see it's like, wow, things outside me don't control me. But then there's a second dimension, that resilience is part of the design of your mind. What's the evidence for that? Well, if you could see me on the screen, I've got my snow globe, and I use this in my coaching therapy all the time and my teaching, and I shake the snow globe. And I just want to get people feeling the idea that there's something always going on in the background. But we think we have to think our way through life, do our way through life, but maybe something's got our back. And there's plenty of evidence and metaphorical evidence to see how that is so. So think of the psychological immune system as being like your physiological immune system. It's just doing its work. So the human mind can be seen to possess this elevating operating system. It's always working in the background. Just like you have that physical immune system, it's going to fight off infections. A lot of people got over COVID. Yes, they were ventilated. Their body was fighting this. If you didn't have a physical immune system, you'd basically drop dead. There's so much going on that's protecting you completely out of your conscious awareness. 95%. Think about homeostasis, the body always wanting to achieve balance. That's all happening within you. Well, it's the same for your mind, yeah? Part of the design of your mind is the capacity for clarity. So what happens when you shake a snow globe? You shake it up, the snow goes everywhere. And what we do is seem to shake it even more. But when we just let it be, when we take a step back, that space, think of that quote, in between stimulus and response, there's a space. That's where clarity can emerge. So think about those times with something that was very much on your mind, but then cease to be without any conscious effort on your part. Or an occasion where you found yourself het up, frustrated, overwhelmed, and then a little while later, having gained some perspective, you asked yourself, what was I thinking? Well, you were thinking and you didn't realize. Your mind is always working in the background, helping you and serving you, well, just, what you need. And what I always like to people to do is to reflect. Think of a recent time when you felt overwhelmed, stressed, or emotionally hijacked. And then often when people think of an example, they'll think about what triggered it. But then what happened? Did you stay with that feeling, or did it change over the hours, days, and weeks? How did your perception of the event change? How did the perception of the situation, circumstance change? And I'm priming you here. Did you have some fresh thinking? Did you see it in a different light? Or did the feeling stay with you? My prediction is it did change. It evolved. And when we look back, just look back at different circumstances in your life. You're like, wow, how did I get over that? We are resilient. We are adaptable. We kind of just forget about it though. And another way I talk about this is the buoyancy that's part of your design. So just imagine now a beach ball. They float naturally. It's an inherent property. But you can hold it underwater. And just imagine holding a beach ball right now, forcing it underwater. And if you want to push it down even further, you have to put a lot of effort in. But what happens when you let go? Of course, it floats back to the surface. Well, what's your personal psychological equivalent of holding or suppressing your own well-being and peace of mind? How do we do this? The common phrase is, how do we get in our own way? What stops you letting go? In what way do you not have buoyancy built into your design as a human being? And perhaps maybe we've all got access to this innate capacity to bounce back. It's built into the design. But it's not obvious to us. And why? Well, because think about basically the last few months. I don't know about you. I've been on an emotional roller coaster, but I've been able to ride the roller coaster. The nature of the human experience is that we don't seem to control what thoughts arise, but we spend a lot of time trying to control our experience. In one moment, I can be completely happy and joyous for no good reason. And then the next, in a low mood and feeling like the world's against me. My circumstances haven't changed. So that's why a metaphor of a roller coaster can be really powerful, because experience is always ebbing and flowing from within. It's all coming from within your own psyche, yeah? But if we consider the self-correcting nature of the human mind, always seeking to achieve balance and homeostasis, well, when we find ourselves at the bottom of the roller coaster, it can be really helpful to remember that new experience will soon arise. Your new thought, a new feeling will come. But what do we do when we get to the bottom of the roller coaster? Well, a lot of the time we fight against it. We think there's something wrong with us. We become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm never going to change. The world's coming at me. You feel completely unresourceful, don't you? You feel that you haven't got access to that resilience that you had the day before. And what does that do? It creates more thinking. Then we ruminate. And then we struggle. And we actually bring ourselves down. Well, a quote I love that kind of encapsulates how maybe we just need to just ride this roller coaster, by George Pransky. The trick in life is to be grateful for the highs and graceful in the lows, because something within us is gonna bring us back up at some point. And beginning to finish up really, this is something where life is our teacher, yeah. And it's the more we see how the mind works from the inside out, which isn't obvious to us, the more we see that we have this psychological immunity and this capacity built within us if we don't put our hands in the machine so often. Well, basically, slightly clunky picture here. There's days, yeah, I do this for a living. I live in the basement. I think the world's coming at me. It is an objective reality. Those mind monsters, those dragons I feel like I have got no resources. I've got no resilience. I feel like basically, I feel like giving up. But then something within me wakes me up, and I realize actually maybe I'm going to have a different perspective on this. I can reframe this. I can see it in a different way. I'll talk it through with my friends or my family or my partner. And yeah, I know there's a different way of seeing it, so I can actually see, get a better view. And actually, and this is where I like more than that, I know all of it is being created from within my own mind. And just according to my state of mind and my mood, it's the extent to which I remember this is like, wow, well, up here it's a beautiful view. And I can see all of life. This is where my resilience lies, yeah? Where I can see, wow, I can just enjoy the view if you like. I can be grateful in the highs. And then if you ask me, it's like, yeah, but Lawrence, I want to spend more time up here. How do I do this? Well, you know what? On one level, I would say being okay down here, the whole thing, the mental health narrative we have now about it's okay not to be okay. Absolutely. Because I think then we're more likely to lift up to the higher floors again. But what I would say is the more we see, those strong feelings, that overwhelm, that's an invitation to step away from your thinking, to realize, what can I control? Well, basically, maybe by letting go of the need to control your experience, the need to be able to control how you feel in any moment, isn't the game. It's the letting go and letting the system work for you. So what I'm saying here is, I think we're all resilient. It's part of our nature. And when we see where our experience is coming from, we see that we're resilient. When your mind settles down, remember the snow globe, you've got access to all the clear thinking and clarity you need. When you're present, yeah? You're not in fight or flight, the stress response, not emotionally hijacked. You're resilient. When you let the elegant design of your mind do the heavy lifting for you, that psychological immune system, you are resilient. And when you're at your best and not fighting your thinking, well, you can work out the cause of your problems. You know how to handle your emotions. You can keep calm in stressful situations. You can be realistic, trust yourself, be empathetic, be motivated, be solution focused. All those attributes, yeah? We've all got access to this. We are not fixed. Resilience not fixed. All depends on the state of our mind in any moment. So finishing up, that space, remember that quote? Between stimulus and response, there is space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our freedom lies our growth and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. In that space lies wisdom and understanding. In that space lies our well-being and mental health. In that space lies our resilience. Now, what I'm going to do is come back to the group here. It's been a whistle-stop tour there. One thing I am going to do is basically stop recording there.